The quest listed 15 goblins, beginner difficulty. Barden read it twice, noted the rank points, and signed. He needed the rank. The goblins were incidental. The three women found him at the board. Mira, robes worn soft from fieldwork, hands steadier than her eyes suggested. Dara, dark-haired, sword on her hip with real use marks on the scabbard. Senna, sharp-eyed, precise, academically strong in a way that hadn't been fully tested yet. Dara looked at his slingshot. That's your weapon? It works, he said. Against goblins? Against most things. He looked them over. Quarter share. I take point. Stay behind me inside. I can see in the dark. We have torches, Senna said. Keep them unlit until I say. Dara nodded. The others followed. They went in. His enhanced eyes turned the black tunnel into flat grey clarity. He picked off 2 sentries before they raised alarm, both stationary, eye shots at 20 meters, bodies dropping without sound. The women stayed behind him and kept quiet. Then the tunnel opened into the main chamber. 40 goblins, perhaps more. A colony, not a nest. For one frozen second, nobody moved. Then every goblin in the chamber turned toward them. Barden fired into the mass, moving targets, chaotic, torchlight throwing shadows. At 900 meters per second, a 5mm lead ball through a goblin's torso was a clean kill. But a clean kill wasn't an instant stop. A body-shot goblin covered another 5 meters before it understood it was dead. He needed eye shots, brain shots, instant drops, moving targets. He hit what he could. Some dropped clean, some kept coming anyway. Dara went down under 3 goblins simultaneously. He put eye shots through 2 of the stationary ones on top of her, lost the angle on the 3rd in the press of bodies. Senna released her largest spell and the mana cost dropped her to 1 knee before she recovered. They were on her before he could get through. Mira threw a holy burst and screamed his name. He hauled Dara off the floor and ran. The left tunnel ran narrow and long, 1 body wide, opening into a small, dry chamber, dead-end, defensible. He set Dara against the wall and looked at Mira. Miracles? 4 today. Her wounds need days. I'll hold the tunnel. He crouched at the entrance, and that was the end of the discussion. The first nights were the worst. Goblins came in rotation, charging straight down the tunnel, which helped, moving fast, which didn't. He let them commit fully to the charge before firing, waited for the movement to straighten and lock, eye shots at the last moment, almost always clean. The body dropped before it reached him, almost always. Mira brought him water on the 2nd day without being asked. He took it without comment. On the 6th day, he went back to the chamber. Senna was sitting up, pale but functional, her eyes sharp in the way they always were, processing, calculating, already thinking past her own injuries. How many are left, he said. The ones who haven't come down the tunnel. How many? 15, maybe 20. She looked at him. You can't eye-shot 20 moving goblins in an open chamber. No, he said. But I don't need to. He held out his slingshot. I need your light, sustained, not a burst. Can you hold it for 2 minutes? She looked at the slingshot, then at him. What are you going to do? Change what I'm enhancing. She understood immediately. He watched it happen in her eyes, the calculation, the assessment, the conclusion. 2 minutes, she said, maybe 3. That's enough. He dropped the eye enhancement. The tunnel went dark, genuinely dark, impenetrable, no different from being blind. 3 seconds of vulnerability while he channeled into the slingshot instead. He felt the bands tighten under his hands, the frame transform, the whole weapon become something categorically different. Now, he said. Senna's light filled the chamber ahead like daylight. He moved. In the tunnel, hold every shot had to be precise. In the open chamber, he didn't need precision. He needed throughput. A 5mm lead ball from an enhanced slingshot through a goblin's torso didn't just kill it. It knocked it backward into the ones behind it and kept going. He fired steadily, not aiming for the eye, just putting rounds through anything between him and the exit. Goblins dropped, some immediately. Some staggered and went down. The ones hit dead center didn't get back up. Dara was moving despite her wounds, sword out, handling the ones that got through the shots, covering Mira, who had Senna's arm over her shoulder. 30 seconds, a minute, the chamber was clearing. Senna's light flickered. He felt her flagging behind him. Keep it up, he said without turning. The light steadied. He put the last 3 goblins down in quick succession, and they walked out of the cave into pale morning light. Outside, he stood still for a moment, dropped the slingshot enhancement, channeled back into his eyes. The world sharpened back into grey clarity. And then something else, larger than the enhancement returning. A second slot opening quietly, like a door he hadn't known was there. He stood with it for a moment. He looked at the 4 of them, Mira exhausted, Dara bleeding, Senna barely upright, alive. On the road home, he fell into step beside Mira. He didn't look at her when he spoke. I had a party once. Goblins took them, all of them. The trees moved in the wind. I work alone from now on. Mira said nothing. Her jaw was set in a way that suggested the conversation was not finished, just postponed. The contract was simple. A river troll had claimed the Aldenmere crossing, the only bridge within 2 days of 3 farming villages. 4 travelers dead in the last month. The guild had posted it twice. Both parties had turned back. Bardan read the file, noted the rank points, and signed. Mira was waiting at the bridge road when he left the outpost. He looked at her. She looked back with the particular expression she had developed since the cave. Not defiant exactly, just settled, like someone who has made a decision they don't feel the need to defend. He walked past her. She fell into step behind him. The troll was exactly where the file said it would be, underneath the bridge, enormous, territorial, apparently unconcerned about anything in the world. It heard them coming on the road and came out to look. When it saw Bardan, it made a sound that was probably the troll equivalent of appetite. Bardan stopped at 50 meters and loaded a pebble. The troll charged. Bardan shot it in the left kneecap before it covered 10 meters. The crack of shattering bone was audible from where Mira stood at the road's edge. The troll went down mid-stride and skidded several meters on the road surface before stopping. It began dragging itself upright on the one working knee. Bardan shattered that one too. The troll went down again and stayed down this time, both legs folded wrong. Regeneration already working visibly on the worse of the two, the flesh knitting, the bone grinding back toward alignment. Bardan watched the process with professional interest for a moment, then put a shot through the troll's left eye. It roared and threw a hand over the socket. Regeneration split 3 ways now, both knees, the eye. The troll's movement slowed. Its breathing changed. He shattered the right eye through the back of the hand covering it. 4 critical points. The troll's body couldn't keep up. It shuddered, slumped, and went still. Bardan walked up, enhanced his belt knife briefly, and took the head. He wiped the knife on the troll's hide and walked back to where Mira stood. She held out his water canteen without speaking. He took it, drank, handed it back. Nothing better to do today. Not particularly, she said. He looked at her for a moment, then turned toward the road back to town. She fell into step behind him. 2 paces back, exactly where she always was. 3 guild parties, none returned. The posting had been up for 2 weeks before Bardan pulled it from the board. Mira looked at the contract over his shoulder. 3 parties, she said. I can read. I'm coming. You're staying at the entrance. She opened her mouth. He was already walking. The mine sat half a day east, a silver operation that had gone silent in a single night. No survivors, no explanation. Bardan spent the walk studying the survey maps, tunnel layout, ventilation shafts running parallel to the main corridors. He committed everything to memory and folded the maps away. At the entrance, he stopped and listened. Something moved deep inside, not goblins. Something larger, faster. Entrance, he said to Mira. Don't come in regardless of what you hear. She didn't look happy about it. He went in. The dark was absolute and completely irrelevant to him. He moved through the main shaft, reading the evidence as he went. Bodies from the first party, then the second, then the third, each progressively deeper, each showing the same pattern. Hit fast, from multiple directions, no time to form any defense. Whatever lived here was quick enough that torchlight and numbers hadn't mattered at all. He found it at the second junction. It came from the ceiling, fast, silent, utterly committed. He threw himself sideways and it clipped his shoulder instead of taking his head, hit the tunnel wall and turned. In the half-second it was still, he got a clear look at it in the dark. Fast, lean, eyes that caught no light at all. It assessed him the way predators assessed unfamiliar prey, recalculating. Then it charged straight. He fired. Moving target, full sprint, the shot caught its front leg cleanly. Not a killing shot, but the creature hadn't expected to be hit at all. It screamed, the first sound it had made, and veered hard into the wall. It recovered in an instant and was gone around the corner before he could follow up. Injured, reassessing, no longer certain what he was. Good. He spent the next hour learning the mine's geometry against the map in his memory, positioning himself in the ventilation shaft above the main junction. The creature hunted below, tracking vibration, growing frustrated. Eventually, it passed directly beneath the grate. One shot, the right place. It didn't get up. He found Senna on the third level, thin, dehydrated, barricaded inside a sealed equipment room. She had been there 4 days. When he opened the door, she looked up at him and with what was clearly her last reserves of composure said, "Took you long enough?" Her eyes were bright with tears she wasn't going to shed. Then she collapsed. He caught her before she hit the floor and carried her out. At the entrance, Mira was already moving, kneeling, hands on Senna's face, miracles flowing before she had finished assessing. It took 10 minutes. When Senna opened her eyes, she looked at the daylight for a long moment. Then at Bardan. "I'm joining your party." "I don't have a party." "I know," she said. She got to her feet with Mira's help and fell into step beside her, both of them behind him. He didn't break stride. The noble's name was Aldrich Voss. His daughter Lyra had been taken 3 days ago by a mercenary group operating out of an abandoned watchtower 2 days north. He had tried negotiating. They had sent him her ring finger. He wanted her back. He wanted them dead. The guild had sent 2 parties already. Both had returned without entering the tower. Bardan read the file and signed the contract. The tower was stone, 4 levels, 1 entrance, a mercenary on every window ledge with a crossbow and nowhere useful to hide on the approach road. Bardan counted 11 men on the exterior from the tree line before anyone knew he was there. Mira and Senna settled into the trees without being told. They had learned to read when he needed quiet. He worked from the outside in. 11 exterior men, 11 shots, the only sound a succession of small impacts as bodies slumped against stone. The men on adjacent windows didn't react. They heard nothing, saw nothing, understood nothing until they were already falling. He was halfway to the entrance when Dara appeared from the tree line on the opposite side of the road. He stopped. She looked at him, sword already drawn, the particular expression of someone who had heard about a contract and made a decision without consulting anyone. He looked back at the tower, then at her. "Ground floor." She nodded and moved. Dara took the ground floor with the focused brutality of someone who had been waiting for something to hit. Bardan worked upward, 2nd level, 3rd, picking off anyone who appeared in a doorway or window before they registered the threat. By the 3rd level, there were 4 men left, and they had figured out something was wrong, barricading the stairwell door, shouting to each other in the particular register of men who are frightened but haven't admitted it yet. The top floor was 1 room, 1 mercenary. Lyra Voss pressed against his chest, his blade at her throat, his eyes on the stairwell door. Bardan looked at Mira in the courtyard below. She was already watching him. He held up 1 finger. She nodded and started moving toward the tower entrance. He put the shot through Lyra's shoulder, in through the front, the pebble exiting through her back and into the mercenary's chest behind her. She dropped. He dropped. Mira reached her in under a minute. In the courtyard afterward, Dara was cleaning her sword. Bardan came down from his position, and she looked up. "Good shooting, good clearing," he said. She fell into step beside Senna, 3 of them behind him now. The town of Breck had been under siege for 11 days. A mercenary army, 400 strong, hired by a rival noble, had ringed the walls and was waiting them out. The town militia numbered 60. The guild posting offered the highest bounty Bardan had seen since he started taking contracts. He signed it and didn't mention it to the others. They found out anyway. The mercenary camp was organized and professional. Supply lines running east, 3 catapults covering the main gate, command tents clustered in the center behind a perimeter of sentries. Whoever had planned this knew what they were doing. Bardan spent a day in the tree line studying it. The others waited without being asked. He started with the catapults. The mechanisms were precise machines. Remove the right component and they became expensive lumber. 3 shots, 3 targeting the windlass pins on each weapon. The catapults didn't fall dramatically, they simply became inoperable. The mercenary engineers took an hour to understand what had happened. By then, he had moved to the supply wagons. Axles, wheel pins, the load-bearing joints on the largest carts. Senna stood 50 meters back, reading the camp layout and calling positions quietly. She had started doing this without being asked 2 contracts ago, and he had stopped pretending not to find it useful. Command tent, left flap. 2 men just came out, rank insignia, both of them. 2 shots. The camp's command structure lost 2 senior officers in the same moment with no sound to indicate where from or why. By nightfall, the mercenary camp was fracturing. No catapults, no supply movement, no senior officers, and no understanding of what was dismantling them or from where. Dara slipped into the town through a drainage culvert and spent 4 hours organizing the militia into something that could push. They pushed at dawn. The mercenaries broke faster than anyone expected. A force that doesn't understand what's killing it loses cohesion quickly. By mid-morning, the road east was full of men who had decided their contract wasn't worth this. The cost was not nothing. Dara took a sword across her back, holding the gate. Senna caught a crossbow bolt through her side from a position she hadn't accounted for. Mira was struck by debris from a collapsing siege engine she had moved too close to. Bardan got them out. He carried Mira the last quarter mile to camp himself. He didn't say anything. His face said enough. They stayed 3 days outside the liberated town while the women healed. Bardan managed supplies, checked wounds when Mira wasn't looking, and sat at the tent entrance at night, watching the dark with the particular stillness of someone who has decided to be somewhere. He didn't sleep much. Nobody mentioned it. On the second evening, Dara was well enough to sit up properly, and Senna's color had come back. Mira moved between them with the focused quiet of someone who had been keeping herself busy for days, so she wouldn't have to think about other things. Bardan watched her from the tent entrance and looked away before she turned around. The third evening, all 4 of them were in the tent, lamps low, the particular quiet of people who have been through something together and haven't yet decided what to do with it. Bardan spoke without being asked. He told them about his first party the way someone describes the shape of a scar. Not the wound itself, just the outline of it, a cave, goblins. He had held a tunnel then too, and it hadn't been enough, and he had walked out alone and kept walking. He had not taken party members since because he knew what it cost when it went wrong, and he was not willing to pay it again. He looked at the 3 of them, injured because of a contract he had signed, in a tent he was responsible for. "When you're healed, I'm leaving," he said. The tent was quiet. Dara looked at the ground. Senna's face was unreadable. Mira looked at him with an expression he didn't examine too closely. Nobody argued, nobody agreed. Later, much later, when the lamp had burned low and the others were asleep, Mira was still sitting up. Bardan hadn't moved from the tent entrance. She came and sat beside him, didn't say anything for a while. The dark beyond the tent was the ordinary dark of a quiet camp, nothing requiring his attention, but he kept his eyes on it anyway. She didn't ask him to stay, didn't try to change his mind. That had never been who she was. What passed between them in the small hours of that night was everything that had been accumulating since the first road home from the first cave. The water handed without asking, the 2 paces behind, the hands that had gone still over the firewood when he didn't answer Senna's question. She gave it all to him without conditions and asked for nothing back. He gave her more than he intended to. In the morning, he was already awake when she opened her eyes. He handed her water. Their fingers touched on the cup and neither of them moved for a moment. Then he let go. He was packed and gone before the others woke. The road to the next town ran through open country, farmland giving way to forest, forest giving way to the kind of wilderness that didn't get named on maps. Bardan enhanced his legs and left the road when the tree line thickened enough to be useful. He had a question he needed answered. The first creature he found was working the edge of a river valley. His enhanced eyes read it before he got close. The weight of it, the density, the particular quality that told him exactly what one shot would do. He loaded, fired, moved on before it finished falling. The second was deeper in, heavier. He read it the same way and the answer was the same. He kept moving. The legs ate ground silently. The eyes found targets before the targets found him. The slingshot did what it did. He wasn't hunting for the kills, he was hunting for the ceiling, the exact point where his eyes told him the shot wouldn't be enough, where one shot became a problem instead of a solution. He found it by mid-morning, a creature his eyes read as too heavy for a clean finish. He noted the threshold, filed it precisely, and moved to packs instead. Packs were the real test. Protecting someone didn't mean protecting against one thing. It meant protecting against several things simultaneously, from different angles, before any of them closed distance. He found groups in the forest hollows and positioned himself above them, reading each one before firing, working through them in sequence. The timing mattered, the angles mattered, how many he could drop before the survivors scattered mattered. He learned what he needed to know. By afternoon he had his numbers, what he could handle alone, what required distance, what required terrain, what would be a genuine problem, not abstractions. Exact assessments his enhanced eyes and brain had built from a full day of live data. He pushed harder in the final hours, found larger packs, harder targets at the edge of his ceiling, worked until the light started going. Something shifted in the late afternoon, a third slot opening quietly. He sat on a hillside and tested combinations until he understood what it gave him, then stood up and walked back toward town. He had left because he needed to know if he was enough. He had an answer now, not a comfortable one. His ceiling was real and he had found exactly where it sat. But knowing it precisely was different from not knowing it at all. Different from watching the siege unfold and not being certain, in the moment, whether he could get them out. He knew now, exactly. The outpost lights were visible through the trees when he emerged from the forest. He could see 3 figures through the window, Mira, Dara, Senna, at a table, an empty seat among them. He went inside, sat down, ate his ration. Nobody asked where he had been. Senna looked at him once with the particular attention she gave things she was still calculating. Mira's hands stayed still around her cup for a moment longer than necessary. He picked up his pack and checked his ammunition. There's a contract on the board. We leave at first light. Baden took contracts alone, moved fast between towns, filed reports, moved again. The work was clean and uncomplicated and required nothing from him beyond precision and patience, which suited him. The casting ritual continued every few evenings. Mold, fire, half an hour, ammunition replenished. Functional, unremarkable. He found the bag in Kelrath, sitting next to his kit at the inn in the evening. A cloth bag of lead pellets, good quality, more than he needed for a while. No note. The innkeeper hadn't seen anyone leave it, or said he hadn't. He looked at the bag for a moment, put it in his pack. The next morning, a small wooden box was waiting at the guild counter. The clerk said a woman had dropped it off earlier. Inside, consistent size, consistent weight, proper specification. A small note at the bottom. Dara? He put the box in his pack and stepped outside. Senna was leaning against the wall, hollow-eyed in the way of someone who had pushed through several days of sustained work. She held out a pouch as he passed. He stopped, opened it, tipped one into his palm. Perfectly formed, surface covered in tiny uniform dimples. He turned it slowly in the light. Where did you get these? I made them. Teach me. She looked at him. It took me 3 days. He said nothing, waited. She sat down on the outpost steps. He sat beside her. His first attempts came out smooth. He looked at them, looked at hers, the dimples. She took her time explaining. When he started producing them correctly, he kept going, each one faster than the last until a dimpled slug appeared in his palm the moment he reached for it. Senna watched him produce one after another at the same pace he could load and fire. Of course, she said. The words landed somewhere between resignation and something she wasn't going to name. She turned and walked away. Thank you. She stopped. Something warm moved through her that she had no immediate category for. She started walking again without responding, a little faster than before. He looked at the slugs in his palm, pocketed them, and stood up. The contract was a bandit group operating out of a farmhouse 2 hours east. 4 men, maybe 5, been shaking down merchants on the trade road for a month. The guild posting had been up for a week. Nobody had taken it. Baden took it at dawn and was moving before the town was properly awake. The farmhouse sat in open ground, good visibility, clear approach, nowhere for them to flank from. He had worked contracts like this before. He knew the geometry. What was different was harder to name. Not tactical, he worked the farmhouse efficiently and alone without difficulty. Something else, Mira's bag left without a word. Dara's name on a note. Senna sitting back down on those steps. He filed it under things he didn't have a category for. Kept working. Combat loadout. Eyes, hands, slingshot. He reached into his pouch and loaded without looking. One of the dimpled slugs from the previous evening's practice session. The first shot went through a wooden shutter and kept going. He stopped. Plain lead at this distance and through that thickness of wood should have been slowed significantly. This hadn't been. He loaded another and fired at a stone wall 30 meters to his left. The impact was wrong. A crack ran through the stone where plain lead would have left a mark. He held a dimpled slug up and looked at it properly, enhanced eyes reading it the way they read everything now, down to the structural level. The magic was in the dimples, not just geometry. Residual enchantment woven into the surface during creation, sitting compressed in the pattern until impact released it. Senna's spell hadn't just shaped the lead, it had armed it. He thought about the 3 days it had taken her, the precision of the pattern she had developed, whether she had known exactly what she was handing him when she sat down on those outpost steps. He decided she had known. He finished the contract. 4 men, 4 shots, filed the report in the nearest village and kept moving. That night he woke from something he couldn't hold on to. Just an impression, warmth, a cup, fingers that didn't move for a moment longer than they needed to. He lay in the dark and looked at the ceiling until the feeling passed. Then he got up, checked the guild board, and took the next contract. The posting had gone up 3 days ago. A creature moving southeast through the valley. 3 villages already, the 4th being the largest, a walled market town called Drenmuth. The guild had mobilized fast. 3 parties, local militia, defensive preparations. Whatever was coming was serious enough that nobody was arguing about jurisdiction. Bardan read the posting at a guild way station and took the road south. He reached Drenmuth before the creature did. Didn't go inside the walls, walked the perimeter, read the terrain, crossed the field to the tree line on the far side and found his position before anyone on the walls knew he was there. He could see the defensive line clearly from here. 3 parties spread across the wall top, archers positioned, militia packed behind the gate. Serious preparation for something they weren't going to be able to stop with arrows and courage. His enhanced eyes swept the opposite tree line. The creature was in there somewhere, working up to the charge. He could feel its weight from here, the particular density his eyes had learned to read. Top of C rank, the 3 parties on that wall were not going to be enough. He looked at the distance between the tree lines. Open ground, clear sightline the entire width. He reached into his pouch, loaded, and settled into his position. The creature broke from the tree line at full charge, fast, enormous, the kind of thing that had leveled 3 villages by simply walking through them. The wall defenders braced, archers loosed, the arrows stuck where they hit, and the creature didn't slow. Bardan fired once. The slug crossed the field silently. The creature dropped mid-stride 30 meters from the wall, not stumbling, not slowing, just down, and the momentum carried it skidding through the dirt before it stopped. Silence. The wall held its collective breath. Archers with knocked arrows looking at each other. Party members scanning the tree line for what had killed it. Militia staring at their weapons as if questioning their own usefulness. Nobody looked at the far tree line. Nobody thought to. On the wall, Mira stood very still. Dara was beside her, hand on her sword hilt, looking at the creature's body and then at the far tree line. Senna had already turned fully toward it, her precise eyes reading the geometry of the shot. One of the other adventurers turned to Dara. What in the hell's killed it? Dara looked at the tree line for a moment. No idea, she said. Mira said nothing. She was watching the far tree line where the shadows moved briefly and then were still. Senna turned back to the creature, said nothing at all. The posting was simple. Women missing from 3 farming villages in the northern valley, 7 in total across the past 2 weeks, taken quietly, no signs of struggle. The guild had connected the incidents only recently. Low rank requirement, standard pay. Bardan took it because it was on his route. At the board, he signed the contract and turned to leave. Mira, Dara, and Senna were at a corner table, already there when he arrived, already deep in conversation with a group of 4 he didn't recognize. Professional looking, well equipped. the body language of people making an arrangement. Something about the four felt slightly wrong. He couldn't place it. Their equipment was right, their manner was right, but something in the configuration of the group, the way they positioned themselves around the table, sat incorrectly in his peripheral assessment. He was already at the door. The women were capable. It wasn't his party. He left. He woke before dawn and was on the road before the others stirred, shifted for travel and put miles between himself and the outpost before sunrise. He reached the nearest village by afternoon, spoke to the headman, picked up the trail within an hour. The trail led into the hills, northeast, moving fast, multiple sets of feet, not trying to hide, confident. He followed it through the night. By dawn, he was in the hills above an old monastery, stone walls, central courtyard, largely intact despite the abandonment it was supposed to represent. 8 robed figures moving between the buildings. A ritual space taking shape in the courtyard. Lesser demons at the perimeter, patrolling with the particular wrongness of things that shouldn't exist in daylight. His eyes swept the compound. 7 women bound near the ritual space, the missing ones from the valley villages. The ritual wasn't complete yet. They were waiting for something. He shifted to combat and fired at the nearest mage. The air between him and the target shimmered, a ripple of disturbed energy, there and gone. The mage didn't react. His eyes read the shimmer instantly, a ward covering the entire compound, and tighter around each mage, personal barriers sitting inside the global ward, 2 layers. He shifted back to full awareness, settled into the rocks, started thinking. He was still working through it when movement in the valley below caught his attention. The group came through the valley, the 4 from the guild hall, and 3 more bound between them. He heard the 4 talking before he saw their faces clearly. Offering starts at midday. 8 should be enough to open the gate fully. 10 is better. The Archon said 10. Then 10 it is. He read the 3 bound figures' faces from the hillside. Mira, Dara, Senna. He filed the information, kept his breathing even, went back to the problem. Midday. Bardan had hours. He used them. The global ward was the first problem. 8 mages feeding it simultaneously meant the regen outpaced anything he could do from outside alone. Every shot he put into it, the shimmer brightened briefly, then faded as the mages compensated. He tested 3 different points on the ward's perimeter. Same result each time. The system was designed for exactly this, sustained external pressure. He needed to reduce the number of mages feeding it, which meant getting inside, which meant breaking the ward first, circular. He worked the problem from a different angle, shifted to full awareness and spent an hour just watching, reading the mages, their positions, their movement patterns, how the ward light distributed across the compound when they shifted, his enhanced brain building a picture from 100 small details. 2 things emerged. First, 1 mage moved differently from the others, slower between positions. Her ward contribution flickered faintly when she walked, steadied when she stopped, tired or splitting her focus. Her section of the ward was marginally thinner than the rest. Second, the personal barriers on the mages were all slightly different sizes. Most sat tight to the body, efficient, well-practiced. 2 of the younger ones had larger barriers, looser, more surface area to maintain, more mana cost, more drain over a long ritual. He noted both and kept watching. The lesser demons were the secondary problem. 4 of them patrolling the perimeter in a loose rotation. They weren't tracking him, didn't know he was there, but they would the moment he started firing in earnest. The shots were silent, but the ward shimmers would tell the mages something was hitting from outside, and the mages would tell the demons where to look. He had a window, not a large one. By mid-morning, he had a sequence. The tired mage first, concentrated fire on her section of the ward, exploit the thinner coverage, break through locally. The moment her section collapsed, she would have to redirect mana to rebuild it. Split focus, her personal barrier would weaken. Second shot, her personal barrier while she was rebuilding the ward. 2 problems competing for her attention at once. If it worked, he had a fractional window before the other 7 compensated. He needed to be moving toward the gap before it closed. If it didn't work, he was inside the ward's collapse radius with 4 demons turning toward him and 7 mages who now knew exactly where he was. He looked at the monastery courtyard, at the 10 women bound in the ritual space, at the sun moving across the sky toward midday. He shifted to combat, waited for the tired mage to settle into position. Fired. The tired mage's section of the ward shimmered and held, then shimmered again, then cracked, a visible fracture in the magical structure, light bleeding through before the other 7 compensated and sealed it. Not enough, but close. He fired again at the same point. The crack reopened wider. The tired mage was visibly struggling now, her contribution to the ward flickering as she split focus between the outer ward and her own personal barrier. Third shot. The section collapsed. He was already moving before it closed again, shifted to pursuit, crossing the open ground toward the gap at a pace that covered the distance in seconds. The gap lasted 4 seconds before the mages sealed it. He was through in 3. Inside the ward, the geometry changed. No more distance, no more clean sight lines. The courtyard was tight, the mages scattered across 3 positions, the demons already turning toward the disturbance in the ward. He shifted to combat and started moving through them. The personal barriers were thinner up close. 2 shots each at point-blank range, the shimmer brightening and shattering. He took the nearest mage before she understood what was happening. Then the next. Each one he dropped reduced the global ward's power, the structure visibly dimming, the shimmer across the whole compound fading by degrees. The demons came. He shifted, legs and hands close quarters, and stopped thinking about distance. The first demon he hit with a point-blank shot to what his eyes read as the closest thing it had to a kill point. It staggered but didn't drop. Different anatomy. He hit it again in the same place and it went down. 2 shots, he filed that, kept moving. The women were still bound when he reached them. Dara had been working her restraints since they arrived. He could see the raw skin on her wrists, hours of effort, not enough. The bindings held. She looked at him with the expression of someone who had been planning a fight they couldn't start and said nothing. Mira had her eyes closed, praying or conserving something. She opened them when he cut the rope. Stood up carefully. She was shaking slightly. Not fear, just the particular exhaustion of someone who had been holding themselves very still for a very long time. Senna was already looking at the ritual structure the moment her hands were free. She pointed at something. He read it with his eyes. A central element, load-bearing. He fired at it. The ritual destabilized, not collapsed, just disrupted enough to interrupt the timing. It bought seconds. He used them. The partial summoning had already begun. Something was half-formed in the ritual space. Wrong geometry, wrong light, the air around it doing things air shouldn't do. Barden's eyes found it and found nothing his training mapped to. No kill point, no readable anatomy. He looked at Senna. She was staring at it, reading what she could from the outside of something she had no framework for. She shook her head slightly. She didn't know either. He fired anyway. The shot passed through it without effect. The thing continued forming. Mira stepped forward. He put a hand out to stop her. She was level 5. This thing would kill her without registering she existed. She stopped, looked at him, then at the forming shape. She said something quietly, not to him. The words had the cadence of prayer. Nothing happened. The thing finished forming. He shifted to combat and put everything he had into the eye socket equivalent his eyes had found on its 3rd pass. 3 shots. The thing came apart slowly, not cleanly, not because of what he did, but because the interrupted ritual had left it unstable. It dissolved back into whatever it had come from. He stood very still for a moment after. Dawn found them outside the monastery walls. 7 women from the valley villages, shaken but alive. 4 cult members bound in the courtyard. The 8 mages, 3 dead, 5 captured. The demons gone or dissolved. Nobody spoke for a long time. Bardan stood apart from the group. His eyes had noticed something in the ritual space during the fight. A symbol carved into the central altar stone. Old, not cult work. Something that had been there before the cult arrived and built around it. He turned away from the monastery and looked at the women. Mira was tending the valley villagers, the only thing she could usefully do. Her hands were steady now. Dara sat against the monastery wall, wrists bandaged, saying nothing. Senna had her eyes closed, the particular exhaustion of someone who had tried to understand something too large for her current capability and knew it. He walked over to Dara first, checked the wrists without asking. "I've had worse," she said. He said nothing, kept checking. He moved to Senna, sat beside her without speaking. After a moment, she opened one eye, looked at him, then looked at the monastery. then closed it again. The barriers, the ward. I need something that goes through. A pause. He could see her thinking behind closed eyes. The slug carries magic from the creation spell, she said slowly. If I modify the enchantment, make it hostile to barrier magic rather than just stable. She trailed off, still working it. It's possible, she said. I don't know the cost yet. He nodded. Sat with her in silence while Mira worked and the sun came up properly over the valley. When Mira finished with the last villager, he stood and crossed to her. She looked up. The spell you used on the demon, he said. I want it in my shots. She looked at him for a moment, then at the monastery, then back at him. I don't know if that's possible, she said. He walked away. The guild official who met them at the nearest town read Barden's report twice without speaking, then set it down and looked at the four of them with the particular expression of someone recalibrating their understanding of a situation. Third incident in 2 months, he said. Same symbol at each site. He told them what he knew. It took 20 minutes. When he finished, the room was quiet. Outside afterward, the women stood together. Bardan waited. Mira spoke first. We were useless in there. Nobody disagreed. Dara looked at her hands. Senna said nothing, but the set of her jaw confirmed it. We need to get stronger, Mira said, before we're anywhere near something like that again. She looked at Bardan. He said nothing. We'll take contracts, she said, appropriate ones. We'll find you when we're ready. He nodded once, walked away. He took a room, then walked into the woods outside town. The monastery had shown him a gap. 8 mages feeding a collective ward. His slug hit it and the energy dispersed harmlessly into the barrier structure. He needed a slug that didn't disperse, something that treated magical resistance as a target rather than an obstacle. His class couldn't cast barriers. Enhancement was modification, not creation, but enhanced matter behaved similarly enough to test against. He picked up a branch from the ground, enhanced it. His eyes read the result. Magical density increased, the enhancement saturating the wood with energy that now resisted external force differently. Not a barrier, but structurally similar. The magical resistance was a cousin of what the ward had done to his shots. He fired at it. The slug penetrated, but slower than it should. The slug's enchantment dispersing on contact with the enhanced wood's magical field. Same failure mode as the monastery. He picked up a stone, enhanced it at higher density, fired again, worse. The denser the magical resistance, the more the enchantment dispersed. He sat on a fallen tree and thought for a long time. The enchantment was passive. It sat in the slug and waited to release on impact. But passive enchantments dispersed when they met active magical resistance. He needed the enchantment to be active, hostile, something that attacked the resistance rather than simply existing alongside it. He spent 2 days finding out how to make that work. Day 3, he fired at the enhanced stone and the slug pushed through. Not fast, not perfectly, but through. The enchantment had eaten into the magical density rather than dispersing against it. 2 shots instead of 1 for a heavily saturated target. Against a real barrier, it would take more, but it was real. On day 5, the demon patrol report came through the guild board. A patrol moving through forest 8 miles east. C-rank party dispatched. He read it, filed his own contract claim, picked up his pack. Across the common room, Mira looked up from her contract paperwork. She saw his pack, looked at the board, looked back at him. He walked out. The C-rank party had been fighting for 20 minutes when Bardan found his first position. The forest was wrong for him. Trees too close, sightlines broken at 40 meters, his usual distance compressed to nothing. He shifted to combat and moved through the undergrowth, angling for elevation. Found a shallow ridge that gave him 60 meters of clear ground across the engagement. He could work with that. 6 adventurers against 10 demons. The party was holding, just. 4 demons down, 2 party members bleeding through their bandages and still fighting. The remaining 6 had stopped charging and started circling, probing the defensive line for gaps, smarter than expected. They had adapted mid-fight. He read the nearest demon from the ridge. Lesser demon, level 18, well within range. His eye crit would handle it cleanly. He shifted to combat and fired. The demon dropped before the party registered where the shot came from. 5. He moved position. The demons were turning, trying to locate the source of the silent shots. He was already at a new angle. 4. 3. The party's leader, a large woman with a broken nose and the economy of movement that came from surviving too many fights, had stopped trying to understand what was helping them and simply adjusted her line to take advantage of the gaps appearing in the demon formation. Smart, 2. The last demon turned toward his position, some sense beyond hearing tracking him. Fast. He had to fire twice, the second shot through the eye socket as it closed the last of the distance. It dropped 4 meters from him. Silence. 10 demons, all down. The party stood in the clearing, breathing hard. The leader was looking directly at the tree line. She couldn't see him. She knew something was there. He stayed where he was, read the fallen demons with his eyes, assessing what the new anti-barrier slug had done on the 3 he'd tested it on. The magical density of their natural resistance had been eaten through rather than deflected. Not instant, but faster than expected. He filed it, 7 seconds of quiet, then the tree line on the opposite side of the clearing came apart. The second patrol hit from 3 directions simultaneously, not the probing approach of the first group, but a coordinated assault. 15 demons at minimum, moving fast and organized, and at the center of the formation, something his eyes read differently. Heavier, denser, more substantial. Not a lesser demon, something directing them. The party leader shouted. Her fighters scrambled to new positions. 2 of them were already wounded. They weren't going to hold this. Bardan was already moving to a new ridge, calculating angles, reading the directing creature through the trees. The forest had just become significantly more complicated. The directing creature held back while the lesser demons pushed forward. Smart. It was managing the assault from behind the formation, reading the engagement, adjusting. Bardan's eyes tracked it through the trees, level 26, C rank, substantial natural barriers across its entire body. Not a personal barrier like the mages had used. Built in, part of its physiology. Bardan tested a standard slug on the nearest lesser demon, dropped it, moved. The party was fracturing. 2 wounded fighters trying to hold the left flank, 3 more managing the right, the leader calling positions in a voice that was staying controlled through effort. They were good. They were losing anyway. Bardan shifted position 3 times in 90 seconds, picking off lesser demons from different angles, silent. The demons couldn't locate him, but the directing creature was watching the gaps appear in its formation and calculating backward. It knew approximately where the shots were coming from, even if it couldn't pinpoint him exactly. It redirected 6 demons toward his general area. Bardan moved fast, shifted for travel, covered ground, found a new elevation. The 6 demons hit the space he had vacated. He was already firing from 60 meters to their left. The party leader went down. Not dead, a demon hit her from behind while she was managing the left flank. She went down hard and didn't get up immediately. The formation buckled. 2 fighters broke, not ran, just lost their shape, fell back without coordination. Bardan had to close distance. He shifted to combat and came down off the ridge into the trees, moving fast, firing as he went, point blank on 2 demons that had broken through to the downed leader. The shots were messier at this range. He had to account for movement, for branches, for the chaos of close quarters. He hit what he aimed at. It wasn't clean. A demon caught him across the shoulder before he registered it had turned. He felt the impact, his body absorbing it, the pain filing itself away for later, and put a slug through its eye socket from 4 meters. It dropped. He kept moving. The directing creature finally moved. It came through the formation fast for something its size, and his eyes read it fully as it closed distance. The natural barriers were layered, dense, the kind of thing his standard slug would shimmer against uselessly. He loaded an anti-barrier slug, fired. The shimmer was different, brighter, the barrier's coherence disrupted rather than just impacted. The creature slowed, not stopped, slowed. Second shot, same point, the barrier layer cracked. It reached him. Bardan went sideways on enhanced legs, not fast enough. It clipped him and he hit a tree hard enough to lose orientation for a moment. His enhanced body absorbed the impact, heart and lungs compensating, but the world tilted and he fired blind on instinct. Missed. Bardan got upright. The creature was turning back toward him. The party leader was on her feet, barely, one arm not working properly, reading the situation. "Hit it again," she shouted. He already was. Third shot to the cracked barrier point, the layer shattered. Fourth shot. Eye socket, no barrier between them now. The directing creature dropped. Silence. 12 lesser demons remained. Without the director, they lost coherence, the coordinated assault becoming individuals again, uncertain, some falling back toward the tree line. The party pushed forward. He picked off the retreating ones from distance. It took another 8 minutes. When it was over, the clearing had 17 demon bodies and 6 exhausted adventurers, and one man standing at the tree line with a torn shoulder and blood on his face that wasn't his. The party leader looked at him for a long moment. "Who are you?" Bardan was already reading the directing creature's body. His eyes found what he was looking for on the hide. Burned deep, unmistakable. The same symbol. Nobody, he said, and walked back into the forest. He walked in on day 6, sat down at the nearest table and ordered food. The 3 women were already there. They saw the shoulder immediately, the way he was holding it, the visible line of new tissue where the wound had been closing for the past hour. Mira was standing before he finished sitting down. He didn't stop her, didn't invite it either. She worked on the shoulder with the focused quiet of someone who had gotten better at this. Her miracles noticeably stronger than they had been at the monastery, the holy energy accelerating what his own enhancement had already started. The combination closed the wound in minutes. She looked at his ribs without asking. He let her. When she finished, he went back to his food. Nobody mentioned that he had just let her help him without argument. Senna waited until Mira stepped back, then put a sheet of notes on the table between them. He looked at it, kept eating. The symbol appeared in guild records 3 times before the monastery, all at sites of major demon incursions, all at least 50 years old, all connected to a specific region in the north. She had found it buried across 3 separate incident reports, cross-referenced by a junior archivist who had apparently flagged the pattern and then been reassigned before anyone acted on it. And at the bottom of her notes, one more entry, an incident report from 2 years ago, a cave system in the northern region, a party of adventurers who went in and didn't come out, one survivor, unnamed, described as young male enhancer class. He read it, set it down, picked up his food again. Senna watched him, Mira watched him, Dara watched him. He ate, then after a long silence, the northern region, not a question, not confirmation, just the words sitting there. Senna nodded once. He stood. Senna reached into her pack and put 3 slugs on the table, ordinary looking. His eyes read them, a faint holy resonance sitting inside the enchantment, unstable but present. Something neither of them could have made alone. During the 2 weeks, Senna said. Dara's sword as well. He picked one up, held it for a moment, set it down. We go north. He walked out. They sat with what had just happened. Dara spoke first. He knew. When he read it, he already knew. Yes, Senna said. How long? Senna looked at her notes. Then at the door. I checked his contract pattern. Every job that takes him north, he takes without hesitation. Every job south he considers first. She paused. It's not obvious, but it's consistent. Mira was still looking at the door. He never said anything, she said quietly. Neither of the others answered that. Bardan lay on his back in his room, heart and lungs running, enhancement targeted on his ribs, letting his body work through what remained of the damage. The ceiling was unremarkable. He looked at it anyway. The symbol, the northern region, 2 years ago. He had walked out of that cave alone and kept walking and never gone back. He had known the shape of it for a long time, the connection between what had happened then and what was happening now. He had just not known anyone else had found it. Senna had. In 6 days of library work, he closed his eyes, let the enhancement do what it did. Outside the window, the town went about its business, indifferent. He would need to go north eventually. He had always known that. The question was what he would find when he got there and whether what he knew now was enough to be useful instead of just present. He lay still and thought about it until his ribs stopped hurting. Bardan was at the guild board when they came down for breakfast. He didn't look at them, took 3 contracts from the northern postings, demon patrol eradications, all within a week's travel of each other, all pointing in the same direction, filed his intent at the desk, walked out. They followed. The road north was quiet for the first 2 days, farmland giving way to thinner country, the villages smaller and further apart, the guild waystation boards carrying more urgent postings the further they went. Demon activity increasing, not organized, just present. things moving through territory they hadn't moved through before. On the second evening, he found the first patrol without the contract giving him a location. His enhanced senses read them through the tree line. 8 demons, loose formation, no directing creature. He shifted to combat. He took the 4 highest level ones before the women engaged. They handled the rest. He watched how they moved, Dara with her enchanted sword cutting through demon resistance in a way her blade hadn't managed before, Senna's spells landing with more precision than he'd seen from her, Mira staying back but reading the engagement correctly, her miracles directed where they were actually needed. Functional, not clean but functional. The holy slug he tested on the last demon performed exactly as his eyes had told him it would, the demon's manifestation destabilizing on impact, the holy resonance disrupting its coherence rather than just damaging the physical form. Faster than a standard kill, meaningfully faster. He filed that and kept moving. The pattern repeated for 6 days. He found patrols, took the serious targets, the women worked through the rest, each engagement smoother than the last. Each day further north, the environment felt incrementally wrong. A thinning Senna was documenting in her notes, a texture to the air that his enhanced senses registered without being able to fully name. On the 7th day, they reached a town large enough to have a proper guild outpost. He walked straight to the desk, registered a party, C rank, 4 members, paid the fee, took the demon eradication contract posted on the board, turned around, walked out. The women stood at the desk for a moment. Mira's hands were very still. Dara looked at the registration slip. Senna looked at the door. They followed him out.